Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Mix's Review. And in this show, what we do is we look at a body of work and mix it up, and talk about the recipes. So for today's show, we've decided to mix up Chrisdvr1, and I think I have actually mixed up Chrisdvr1 in a previous episode, but we were just talking about one recipe at a time back then, when we still were doing a long-winded hour and a half kind of podcasts, but this is a lot more focused. So I'll kick off, okay? And so the first one that I mixed up was something that is not in my wheelhouse whatsoever, which is hot lemon curd. And so to describe this, so let's talk about the recipe first. So that's 4% Flavor West Bavarian cream, 0.4% TFA butter, 3% FA custard, 2.6 cap juicy lemon, 1% FA lemon Sicily, and 3% TFA sweetener. So, when I looked at this recipe, I thought, I don't even actually know what lemon curd is. So, because this is not so popular in South Africa, or not in the circles that I move in. So it says it's a curd. In a sense, this is what I got off the internet. It's a curd in a sense that's like cheese curds. It's thickened by the action of coagulating proteins. Indeed, many Brits call lemon curd lemon cheese for this reason. The main difference between a curd and a custard, in addition, is it not having cream or milk in it. It is that it contains a bit more sugar. So it's a little bit more sugary. It doesn't contain any dairy or milkiness to it. That's what I'm getting from curd. And also that's the picture that Chris has on. Oh, just for people that don't know, so I went to Chris's profile. He says they're father of 3 truck driver, and he likes mixing up desserts and drink profiles. And he lives in Salt Lake City in Utah. Okay, so back to the recipe again. So Chris uses quite interesting little base here for that, how can I say that, the lemon custard here, right? So he uses cap juicy lemon and FA lemon Sicily combined with FA custard. Now, FA custard has got a lemon note to it. It's quite lemon forward, FA custard. I think I've bought it about a half a year, maybe a year ago, and I've never really used it because of that lemon note. And, that's why I was interested to mix this up, because I haven't really seen anybody else use this in a recipe. So, maybe somebody else has made that mistake, and here's a solution for you. I think why the custard binds so well with these 2 lemons, and Chris used these 2 lemons because they're just his favorite lemons, is because the custard already has a lemon in it, right? So it takes much better to that lemon note. Chris then goes in with like a whopping 4% of Flavor West Bav cream, because that's his favorite Bav cream from a richness and a mouthfeel perspective, right? That we've spoken about this before. The Bavarian cream used in certain dessert recipes or dessert style recipes can really fill out a lot of holes. It can really add a lot of richness to a recipe, and I think it's really the perfect place to use this, because he needed a little bit more depth. But there's something else that happens here. We'll speak about it later. He then goes in with TFA butter, because why not, right? I mean, that stuff is beautiful. I forgot about TFA butter completely because I don't do desserts anymore. And, I've been tasting it in here, and it is divine. It is so good. So he needs that to boost, of course, the buttery notes and the richness of the custard. And that's exactly what it's doing here. what I'm getting is, this is a sweet, nicely rounded, rich lemon custard, okay? And the reason why I'm saying custard here is because of the Bavarian cream. I can taste the cream notes in there. So if I go and read what what a curd is, and I might just have the wrong source here, I shouldn't be getting those creamy dairy notes in there. That's why I'm thinking in my head, this is more on the custard side. So yeah, I mean, that's literally the only thing I can say about this recipe, and it's kind of nitpicking a little bit. If it wasn't for that little small thing, I would rate this a 5 out of 5, as a sweet lemon custard. Um, but just because of the difference from, what the description or what the title is of this recipe and what I'm getting, I went with 4.5 out of 5, which is still really high. This is a banging recipe, probably the best lemon custard I've had, and I think it's the sweetness and the TFA butter. I mean, if you're not using a little bit of TFA butter in your custards, what are you doing? You should definitely try that out. And, he does it in here and it really does well. And it's such a nice, rounded, deep experience with this custard that I'm getting. I really enjoyed this. I don't vape custards a lot, and this is kind of swinging me back to what a custard can be, which is different for me. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you very much for this. So, Deetz, what did you mix up?
I mixed up the watermelon jelly rancher that he has, and I knew as soon as I read the concentrates that I would love this. It's 2% cap jelly candy, 0.25 FA lemon Sicily, 0.75 cap super sweet, and 5% LA watermelon. The super sweet was the only thing I was a little bit of. Even though I do like super sweet, I normally don't like it this high, but it suits the recipe very well. I've personally been trying to nail a watermelon for a while. I have a few recipes on it, so I really enjoy watermelon. With this specific one, it's really simple. It's a great recipe because of how simple it is for me. It's if you take the super sweet out of the main concentrate list, then you're sitting with three concentrates very well used with a percentage. And the way they blend together makes this a very simple, very easy, spot on recipe. I don't know if the recipe actually refers to a actual ice lolly or, well, not lolly or something. I don't know, because someone commented and said it's a spot on jelly ranch. Is it a sweet or something?
Jelly rancher. Let me just check here. I think it's like a gummy kind of licorice candy vibe thing. Let me just check here.
Yes, it's a sweet, definitely. Okay, so I've never had that, but it is definitely a watermelon candy. It is a good watermelon candy.
Oh yeah, it's just like a jelly candy. That's all it is. Yeah.
The watermelon that he uses is one of my two favorite watermelons, and in this recipe it works really well. I did mix it again because I ran out of LA watermelon, and I used Perillanum watermelon, and it works very well. I like both recipes. I can't really say which one or one is better than the other, subbing only the watermelon at 1-to-1 percentage, because they both have, there's just something that unique about both of them, and they both work very well. For me, because it's a simple recipe, it's great. Watermelon works really well. Everything blends together very well with the jelly candy, and it reminds me of that's what my note says is it's a watermelon syrup, like a candy syrupy, and it's because of the jelly candy mixing. So it's a great candy. Candy is my favorite. Fruit's my favorite. Watermelon goes down very well. For me, all in all, a great recipe. 5. So yeah, 5. Definitely a good recipe. Thanks, Chris. The lemon Sicily. This is something now, because of the experiments I've been doing with watermelon. It took a lot of concentrates for me to nail what he's done with the 0.25 lemon Sicily. I have not used it a lot because I have used it in excess, as everything I don't use a lot is because I've used it in excess once. So the 0.25 lemon Sicily really pops the fruit, and almost in a candy, you know, with a jelly you get sugar, but it's not sugar, it's like a sour sugar. So I was actually thinking the sour in this is going down really well, but there's no sour in it. So that Sicily is popping the candy and giving it like a sour candy vibe going. Works very lekker.
Cool.
What did you mix up, Rich?
Right, I mixed up 3. I'll start off with the first and simplest one, which was his banana milkshake. It's a fairly standard mix. It's the milkshake base is 5% TFA vanilla bean ice cream, 1% FA cream fresh. Then he adds 1.25% TFA graham cracker clear and 1% FW hazelnut. Those are all fairly common in milkshake bases. And then his banana combo is also a reasonably common one of TFA banana cream and FA banana. But what is a little bit different about this is that the banana combo, as popular as it is, most people tend to go, much higher on the TFA banana cream, and then just have a little bit of the FA banana in as an accent just to round out the TFA. What he's done here is he's done them in a 1-to-1 ratio, 3% of each, which is quite interesting. I haven't seen FA banana used that high before. In terms of the vape, the base is fine. It's smooth, perhaps not velvety smooth, but certainly smooth enough, quite dense, quite creamy, and it's a very acceptable milkshake base. It's thick, it's got the right sort of texture, the right sort of feel that I would expect from a milkshake base. The banana top note is good in parts. I think the balance is okay. The problem I'm getting with it, a couple of weeks ago we did, when we did Emily, I did that Miller's and Nana's, the banana pudding. And there that TFA banana cream just beds into the base beautifully, and you get just a homogenized, single flavor experience from it. With this TFA banana cream and FA banana combo, what I'm feeling is a little bit of separation between the banana top note and the milkshake base. It's not critical, but it does just feel a little bit disjointed, and I think that might be because of the high percentage of the FA banana. It does add a little bit of that green note that the FA is known for. It's not quite as creamy as the TFA, and I think that's the part that's maybe just standing out above the base. It might be a steeping issue, although I don't think so because I mixed this up on the 11th. So it's had 12 days steep. He reckons a 2-week steep is about right for it. So it's pretty close to its optimal steep time. I'd maybe leave it for another week to see if that banana sits down in the base a bit more. But there's nothing wrong with the mix. The balance is good. I was actually quite surprised. The banana is as balanced and as fitting as it is, with that high percentage of the FA in there. So there's no off notes, there's nothing off-putting. But I'd probably, wait a bit longer just to see if the steep doesn't help it to settle into the shake base. But even as is, it's a very competent and pleasant vape. There's nothing in here that's going to turn people off if you like banana. Of course, it is a little bit runty, but that's what banana does. Almost all the flavors have got a degree of runts in them, and that's present here as well. But there's good runts and there's bad runts. This is on the better side, the more sort of acceptable edge of the banana runts spectrum. So yeah, perfectly fine mix. Nothing wildly daring in it, nothing wildly different in it, except for that high FA banana. But it generally hangs together pretty well for me.
So I mixed up Now you can't do a Chrisdvr1 show without actually talking about sugar cookies and cream, because this is one of his highest rated recipes. I'm not sure how many. I think it's in the 40 people have rated it a 4-star recipe. I've mixed up at least about 300 mils of the stuff and vaped through it all. I absolutely love this mix, especially when I was vaping a lot more dessert style recipes, stuff that was a little bit heavier. And but what I was interested to do is to see if we have a victim of Inawera biscuit here. You know what I mean? Same as Simply Cannoli, another victim of Inawera biscuit. So I was interested to see what happens here. I've mixed that up. I've let it sit for almost, about a week and a half, and I've spun that up in between, on and off for a day or two on my mixer at room temperature. But let's just talk about some other things here. So I went onto this recipe and I scrolled down to the comments, and what really bugs me about this recipe is what is said in the comments. I mean, there's a person here called Slushy with a comment, I really don't see why this recipe is so popular. It's very light and muted in my opinion, but doesn't go on and justify what is light and what is muted, right? And immediately after that, Zug Machine expresses his doubts on mixing this. Even though this recipe itself has got, 44 ratings and is sitting at 4 stars. Sinsin then luckily comes in, stepping in, saying, he's learned that people should rather just try things out for themselves. And I just wanted to echo what Sinsin is saying there. If something looks good and there's a ton of great ratings on it, then give it a smasheroo. Don't be bothered with one kind of off comment on a recipe. Try it out and come back with some feedback. Come back with some review feedback for the mixer. So back to the recipe itself. It's 1.5% Flavor West Bavarian cream, 0.75% Inawera biscuit, so pretty low on the Inawera biscuit, but it's a strong flavor. 0.5% TFA butter, 1.25% FA cream fresh, 0.6% hazelnut, 4% sugar cookie, 1.25% FA Vienna cream. Okay, so what Chris is saying there is butter, biscuit, and sugar cookie as the base. Biscuit was used here to dry out the capped sugar cookie and give it a freshly baked hard shell vibe to the cookie. And I think that's a very clever way of creating, because capped sugar cookie is a beautiful, delicious, deep, soft cookie for me. That's how I'm tasting it, right? But then if you want to create a bit more of a harder shell to it, mixing a little bit of Inawera cream in there with it will dry things out a little bit and create that hard shell. And, I didn't really think of it like that until I read these notes. So it's super interesting to read the notes on people's recipes. So, this is definitely something that I experienced because it's a very authentic, freshly baked cookie with a hard shell for me. Vienna cream and fresh cream, this is to create almost like a frosting, so that you get like a buttercream frosting with your cookie. Remember, we need to consider that this is a pretty old recipe, and I think there's, what has emerged is quite ingenious ways of creating buttercream, and there's some great buttercream concentrates out there, or frosting concentrates that you can use, but they might be a little bit too frosting forward, and that could deviate from the cookie. So I think what Chris is trying to sell harder here is the cookie, and in that scenario, I think he's done a great job here. However, with the new reformulated Inawera biscuit, I feel that this recipe probably needs to be re-looked at. I mean, this is an iconic recipe and we need to look at a replacement for that biscuit or just something else that can give us the imitation or feel that the sugar cookie is a little bit more snappy without adding anywhere a biscuit. So I almost want to ask, Chris to relook at this, because, this is one of my favorite recipes when I started DIYing and looking at recipes on all the flavors, and especially on the high rated recipes, because if you go in on all the flavors and you look at recipes, you're obviously going to click on popular and you're going to hit the search button, and this is one of the recipes that's going to be at the top. And what will happen is they'll get Anywhere a Biscuit, and it will be the reformulated version, and they might not actually get what we were getting at the time with the old Anywhere a Biscuit. But this recipe is iconic, and therefore I think it needs to be just, somehow adjusted so that we can still get this recipe, this experience out to the people who want to try it. But I wouldn't have mixed this up if I didn't love it, or I didn't think it would be tasty. I've tried it certainly in almost more than 400 milliliters of this before, and I really love it. It's definitely a 4 out of 5. So I think the rating that it was given on all the flavors is true, and I love it. I just think it needs to be redone.
Right, my second one is waffle pop. The recipe is 4% oil liquid barn Belgian waffle, 1.5% Flavor West butterscotch ripple, 0.6 of TFA butter, 0.5 of FW hazelnut, and 1.25 of FA Vienna cream. It basically does what it says on the tin. It's a waffle, but not a crispy, toasty, browned, crunchy waffle. It's more of a smooth, creamy, almost like a waffle batter or a waffle that hasn't been fully cooked yet. It's a relatively low-risk recipe. These are all, quite safe flavors. They're quite conventional flavors. They've been used a lot together. It's the waffle as the base, the hazelnut and the Vienna cream add a sort of malty, creamy aspect to it. The butter just, again, moistens it up, adds a little bit of a buttery edge. And the butterscotch ripple is just in there to add a sweetening accent and a butterscotch flavor that just moves it just out of the realm of being just a plain waffle. It works really well for me. The ripple adds just enough interest to boost it beyond being a plain waffle. Everything hangs together very well. Texturally, it's right. It's thick, it's smooth, it's creamy, but it does have that undeniable sort of waffle undertone to it. The ripple doesn't dominate as a top note. It's very subtle in there, just an accent to bend the recipe in a slightly different direction. And this, for me, is the equivalent of comfort food. I know what I'm getting just by looking at the ingredients in the recipe. It doesn't introduce anything wildly new. It's not a high-risk recipe that nobody's tried before. It has that instant feel of familiarity to it. And as I say, it's comfort food. It's an easy vape. It's a smooth vape. It's a rich vape. But nevertheless, it's something that I can vape all day long. I know what I'm going to get, and I'm very happy with what I'm going to get. This is a mix that puts a smile on my face. It's right in my wheelhouse. It's exactly what I want from a vape juice, and that's really all I can expect. It's it doesn't push the envelope in any direction. It's not going to wow people with some dramatic new angle on an established profile or some entirely new profile. But it does what it does very competently, and is worth mixing up for that alone.
Yeah, it seems like Chris likes his, his rich vape juices. I mean, I've read about him using TFA butter and stuff, and why he uses it, and yeah, I don't know. I've just been getting this really rich vape experience out of his juices.
Yeah, he's into bakeries and desserts as well, which are my two favorites. So needless to say, I mix up a lot of Chris's stuff. And the third one I tried is one of his earlier recipes, which is coconut marshmallow custard cream. And if there's one thing this juice has, it's a spectacularly descriptive name, because it's got 3% FW Bavarian cream and 2.5% FA cream fresh. It's got 1.25% FA coconut, 1.25% FA marshmallow, 4% cap vanilla custard, and 0.25% of ethyl maltin. So it's 2 creams, a coconut, a marshmallow, and a custard, and a bit of sweetener. So coconut marshmallow custard cream is really descriptive of what you're going to find in the juice. And this now is a little bit different. Coconut custard, accepted. Maybe custard with marshmallow, accepted. Coconut and marshmallow, that's where this starts to deviate from the script a little bit. But let me just break down the vape and then it should all become clear. I find this the vape from this light but not thin. I mean, you've got the light marshmallow, the light cream fresh, the Bav isn't the heaviest base, and then FA coconut as well is, it's a fairly dry, mild coconut. It's not a really heavy, thick, rich, buttery coconut like Flavора's is. So particularly with the marshmallow being pushed into the realm where you can actually taste it as marshmallow, it's not in here just for sweetening or for mouthfeel. The 1.25% FA marshmallow actually does register as a distinct marshmallow flavor. So the overall effect, it has good mouthfeel, it has good body to it, but it's nevertheless still quite light. The more interesting part for me is the very layered and complex exhale. What I found is that with custard and coconut especially, you get notes that build on the exhale and which linger. With custard, you've got that vanilla note, that trademark calf vanilla custard note. And with almost all coconuts, there's a lingering sweetness on the exhale. And then marshmallow does it as well to a degree. Now, what happens on this vape is that at the start of the exhale, you get that very prominent coconut note. But then as the exhale continues, you get these lingering notes of the vanilla custard and the marshmallow coming in as well. And it's almost like a musical arrangement where you've got the coconut as your base notes, and then the custard and the marshmallow coming in as harmonics harmonies that make up the chord as such. They're quite similar notes. It's sort of lingeringly sweet notes, and they synchronize quite well. The only thing is, for my palate personally, the coconut and the marshmallow together it's not that they clash, it's just that there's something there that doesn't quite fit well with me. It's kind of like a blues trio where you add a fourth instrument and the fourth instrument isn't adding what you think it would add. So it doesn't work that well for me. It might work very well for others. I see that in the recipe notes for this, the people who rated it suggested that Chris should maybe try a sweeter coconut, like TFA coconut candy or Flavora sweet coconut. And I'm not sure I agree with that. The FA gives a slightly more earthy and less sweet and also a dry note in amongst that vanilla custard and marshmallow, which I think is quite pleasing. It's just that the marshmallow and the coconut don't gel that well together. I'm not sure having a sweeter coconut is actually going to solve that. It's just the two flavors don't sit right for me. So overall, I don't think this would be in my rotation, but I would urge people to try it simply because that exhale is so complex and so interesting that it's worth just experiencing it, just to see what you get from it and how you feel it could be changed if it's not to your palate, how you feel it could be changed, to bring it in line with your palate. Probably my go-to for this recipe would be to drop the FA marshmallow right down, or leave it out altogether. That to me would result in a vape and an XL that is close to my palate. But other people may love that complexity with the 3 different notes, coming in at different points on the XL. So yeah, it is a little bit risky. It's very common ingredients, but he's blended them in a way and in a balance that is not typical. This is not the type of recipe that you can find, many different other versions of it. It's a quite unique flavor profile and very interesting. And I would suggest that people try it. If you have the flavors, give it a go. See what you think of that XL. See what you think of those notes all playing together on the XL. And it might just be something that is completely in your wheelhouse and which becomes a winner for you. But for me, this is probably not something that would make it as is into my rotation. But an interesting recipe, and thanks for that, Chris.
Cool. So that pretty much wraps up all the recipes, unless somebody else has anything to say.
Well, the only thing I missed was he recommends a 14-day steep on the watermelon jelly rancher. There's no way it's going to last 14 days if you taste it very soon after making it. I think I made day 6 or day 7 and I finished the sample I had and I made another. It's a really good recipe. So I'm actually, from listening to you guys, it seems like he's really focused on the desserts. But for someone who's focused on desserts, smashing a fruit candy, he did it very well, yeah.
Cool, man.
And the percentages were low. That was also the other thing. Low percentage, a lot of flavor on that watermelon.
Yeah, but in the same breath, this hot lemon curd, he cranks a couple of things here, he likes to crank it up a little bit. This hot lemon curd, for me, this is a commercial, this has got a commercial vibe to it because of the sweetener, because of the, the richness in the recipe. If you put this into a bottle and you put it out commercially kind of thing, people will love it. This will be a commercial style recipe. I really enjoyed this one. I like my sweetener and I've got a sweet tooth, so that's probably why I rated it so high. Other people might cringe at 3% TFA sweetener, just looking at their coils. But I enjoy it. I'm not going to vape this recipe every single day, but on cold winter nights, I think this will be absolutely pleasant. But yeah, that kind of wraps it up. I've had a look at Chris's all the flavors profile. If you go and check it out, you will see that sugar cookies and cream is his #1 recipe, then lava flow by Naked Remix, second favorite recipe, then coconut marshmallow custard cream, third favorite, and then fourth favorite, orange glazed donut. So go and check out his mixes, guys. Go and mix them up. Go and leave reviews and responses on Chris's stuff there. And thank you very much, Chris, for putting out all these recipes so that we can talk about them and we can mix them up. I really enjoyed mixing this up. I tried something different this week. But yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, cool, guys. Thank you so much for watching the show. If there's any one of Chris's recipes that we haven't spoken about, which is plenty, that we haven't spoken about, please go ahead and leave the recipe below and comments below so that people that do see this video can also look at some of these other recipes. Or if there's any questions, leave the comments below and we'll get back to you. Thank you very much for watching the show. Cheers, guys.